Hello everyone, this will be a short recording regarding Baldur's Gate 3. I'll share what I think, starting with the positives. I think it's great that there's terrain interactions, deep character discussions, character choices, and that they're sticking to the old ways. That's really all I can say for positives, so let me move into the negatives. I get a feeling that sticking to the old ways may not be healthy for the game. My reason for saying this is because if you look at Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, it was during a time when the tabletop community was much larger. Sure, there are still tabletop communities to this day, but it's not to the magnitude that it was back then. Back then, it was very common to find, comic book stores or stuff filled with people trying to find, a group for tabletop. But you don't see that really anymore. Even the more recent tabletops that have world tournaments, their population is dwindling to a point where that game's probably not going to survive for much longer. What I'm trying to say is that because the population's a lot lower than it was back then, there's going to be less of a chance for Baldur's Gate 3 to be well received by people who are familiar with the system. I get a feeling that it's highly likely that people who are going to play Baldur's Gate 3 next year are going to be people who are going to have to sit down and listen to YouTube videos or something to figure out what is going on. Moving on to the classes, I really dislike that they gave us some of the most basic classes for early access. I was expecting to see at least a barbarian, monk, or paladin, some sort of class that has a bit more to it, more involved with mechanics and things like that, so that we can get more of an idea as to what Larian is trying to do. Sure, Larian said that they would stick to the 5e, but how close they're going to stick to that is a question. We won't know until we actually start seeing the classes that have a bit more mechanics involved to them. It certainly would have been nice regardless, just because, of how basic these classes are. Like, I would have much rather seen a paladin instead of fire. That would have been awesome. That's just my take on that. That's really all I can say for positive and negatives. I want to now finish the discussion with Vulkan. Interesting enough, Baldur's Gate 3 has the option for both Vulkan and DirectX. Whether or not that's going to be a good or bad thing for, game stability is yet to be determined. However, it is a very large milestone, and most people probably won't know this. It's a big milestone because it now proves that a game can be made to work with one or the other with a flip of a switch. Why this is a big deal is because of operating systems. There are operating systems outside of Windows that can game. Linux is one of them. Linux has a few different distributions that are capable of gaming, but there isn't a lot of support for them. It's really a wall, if you will. While the Linux distributions can do it, they're not receiving enough support to make it, more possible. So they have to use alternative methods. Because of this, you have to, Google or use specific search engines to see if a game's going to even work on that operating system. Due to games not being guaranteed for that, people aren't going to want to move over to that operating system, and thus that creates a lack of demand. So yeah, it's a dual-edged sword, or a wall, if you will. Until we can get more games on Vulkan, there won't be any progress with the other operating systems that can game, is what it boils down to. If you all want to be stuck with Windows for the rest of your life, then that's your call. But please, if you are going to do that, just at least ask for Vulkan in future games. Well, Vulkan and DirectX 11, because that would make the world a better place, quite honestly. So I'm super thankful that Baldur's Gate 3 is doing that. But that's all I can say. Thanks for listening.